In Thunder at the Gates, there's a new achievement to promote a ship captain to be an admiral. It's called From Rags to Admiral Stripes, sorry. And it's very easy to do, you just need to get enough command power. But there's actually some Easter eggs. You can see all the ship captains, they're all very generic. They all have similar portraits. But if we go to the home fleet, and then we find the HMS Shikari, we have here an actual person. This is, let me just get this back up again. In the Shikari. This Frederic John Walker, this is a real person with a unique portrait like all the other admirals. And there's 8 of these in the game. For random nations, most of the majors, they've all got one boat that has a captain with a unique portrait, and it's a real person. So, who is Frederic John Walker? Seeing as is a real person. So he took part in the Dunkirk evacuation and became the most successful anti-submarine warfare commander during the Battle of the Atlantic. And he's got a pretty cool pipe. He ended up sinking 20 U-boats and provided many successful escorts, including an Arctic escort all the way to Murmansk, where they didn't lose a single vessel. And then he helped provide anti-submarine warfare cover during Normandy invasions, and by this point he'd been working throughout the war, and he was so tired they told him to go take a rest, and he had a stroke a month later, possibly from tiredness or exhaustion, and that was in 1944. So that was anti-submarine warfare. Let's look at Germany, because they've got... Which one's it's? U3. Here. So, on U3 we have Captain Günther Prien, and Günther is also a real person. And he actually is quite famous for leading one submarine from Kiel all the way up to Scarpaflow, where he sank HMS Royal Oak in 1939. So it's one of the things that really showed what the U-boats could do. It was quite a daring mission. Most of the British home fleet was actually stationed in West Scotland because they'd been pursuing ships in the North Sea. So most of them weren't actually there, and it was only the HMS Royal Oak and HMS Pegasus that was there, and he sank the Royal Oak. And then he did other things during the war. He also went as part of the invasion of Norway, and he told Donitz that the torpedoes from the U-boats were so ineffective that they were essentially fighting without any weapons. And then in 1941 he went on his 10th patrol, and he never returned, so he most likely died during March 1941. Right, let's go on to France now. And if we look at their African squadron, and we look at the Vauban, there it is, we have this real person, Raymond Fenard. So he's not actually really that famous for doing naval stuff during World War II. He's more famous for things he did on land. He spent lots of the war in North Africa as part of Vichy France, and then he helped negotiate the surrender of Vichy France forces in North Africa during Operation Torch. And even though he was part of the Vichy France military regime, he then went on to become the chief French naval mission to the United States and helped rebuild the French fleet, and he died in 1957. And then continuing on in the Mediterranean, we've got an Italian, once again on the submarines, who is famous for not what he did in the Mediterranean, but what he did in the Atlantic. Why is it? RMS H4. Here it is. RSmg H4. Here we have Salvatore Todaro. Let's just promote him. Wow, they gave a submarine person aviation. They always get random traits whenever you promote them, so this means absolutely nothing. So he actually was based out of France and did lots of convoy raiding down here near the Azores, near Madeira, and around Cape Verde, so all in this area. And he sank a Belgian steamer and rescued the lifeboat. And he sailed the lifeboat to the Azores over 4 days, so his submarine was surfaced for 4 days. And then eventually there was a storm, and the lifeboat was going to get capsized, so he let the crew onto his submarine. And I've seen two reports. Some say it took him to Cape Verde, which is here, and some say it took him to the Azores, which is up here. But then also another report that he also rescued a British steamship. So the two things may be a bit confused, but he might have done it twice. And apparently the Germans weren't happy with him rescuing the people, but he said, you know, he's a sailor and this is what they do. Though whether or not that's dramatised, I don't really know. And during Operation Torch in 1942, he helped do like harassing parties on the landings, and he was killed in airstrike on the ship he was in at the time while he was asleep. And then we'll continue on to the Soviet Union, and when you guess where this person was based in the Soviet Union for World War II, you'll be like, wow. They operated out of Leningrad, which is this bit, the Gulf of Finland, was the most heavily mined body of water in the world for a while, and the fact that he managed to get out there and do something was incredible. So let's find him. It's the Baltic Fleet, and he is on the 303. Yes, Ivan Travkin. There we go, I found him. Oops. So he would go on to receive the Hero of the Soviet Union Award for his submarine duties during in the Baltic, where he was operating out of Leningrad. You know, the fact that they could even repair ships and do that during years of being besieged was absolutely incredible. And then the fact that he actually went and sank 13 convoy ships that the Germans had while from, you know, a besieged city like Leningrad. And then later on he actually operated out of Finland in these two bases here when Finland had the armistice with the Soviet Union later on in the war. And then he died in 1985. Right, let's go somewhere a bit warmer. Australia. And this is the only one that's not a major that starts with a captain. So we've got the Australia Squadron, and if we look at the Stuart, we have Hector Waller. And Heck Waller was he only lived to his early 40s, but he was lifelong in the Navy. He entered the Naval College at age 13, and even managed to serve during the last part of World War One in the Royal Navy. And in 1936, he actually started commanding the Stuart in 1937, and it was what the Germans mockingly called the Scrap Iron Flotilla, which is when they were operating in the Mediterranean. And then he ended up commanding the HMAS Perth, and went down fighting in the Battle of the Sunda Strait alongside the USS Houston in 1942, and the ships exhausted all their ammunition to a much superior Japanese force. Right, and then speaking of Japan, let's go over there next. Where am I going to find this guy? Ah, right away, the Sendai. Here we go. So, this person, Kōsaku Aruga, this is also a real person, and he took part in the Battle of Midway, and it was actually his destroyer that the Americans followed back to the main carrier task force, which allowed them to sink all the carriers at the Battle of Midway. So that's an interesting fact for him. And then in 1945, when Japan was at risk of being invaded, he was giving command of the... which one was it? The Yamato? And he was tasked with sailing to Okinawa, and he was meant to beach his... You know, it's the biggest battleship ever built. He was meant to beach it and help stop any US naval invasions. But he got sunk on the way, and apparently he was last seen lashing himself to the boat so that he would go down with the ship. And then to go to the USA... Right, where do I find this guy? He's in the submarines. I think he starts on the Cachalot. Here we are, Slade Cutter. So this is also one of those people who, in 1936, was nowhere near a boat. So before the war, he was more famous for being an all-American American football player, helping the Navy beat the Army 3-0. And like most of these Easter eggs, he's on different boats from what he would have been, you know, because they had to start in 1936. Because he was still a junior officer serving on the USS Idaho at the time. And in 1938, he finally entered submarine school. And during the war, he's been credited with being the second place US Marine submarine ace with 19 ships sunk. And he died in 2005. And that's it for all the real captains with unique portraits. There's a few other things that have real people. So if we tag back to Germany, these don't have unique portraits though. And then we actually look at the army. We can see that their panzer divisions, Rudolf Schmidt and Rudolf Weil and Ernst Fessmann, these are all real people. They don't have unique portraits like the those 8 captains do. And also, interestingly, if you go into the northern armies, northeastern army in China, essentially every single one of these people is actually named after a real person and a real division. Like if we look at what is it, 114th? This, you know, Chen Guangkun actually did serve as commander of the 114th Division. So someone in Paradox went through and did all of those. It's a shame they don't have unique portraits like the boats, but I think that's interesting as well. That's a lot of China does it. Just those 3 for Germany. Quite a few in Ethiopia as well are real names, even if not real portraits. And if you want to try and find any yourself, you go into the history files in your Hearts of Iron folder and search for the order of battle, and search the keyword is officer, and you'll, in the order of battle, anything that's a named person is going to be an officer, and that's ones they've specifically put in. But if you want to do the from rags to Admiral Stripes achievement, but make it a little bit interesting and choose a historical person who never made the rank of Admiral, you've got a few, 8 Easter eggs to choose from.